Hi, and welcome along to AFTV News Daily. I hope you guys have had yourself a great day. Broadcasting to you across YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, and also on Twitch. Big up yourself if you're on Twitch following us, right? Because we know that's our smallest platform, but we're working on it. We're working on it, right? But big up to everybody joining us for the show today. Just before I bring in my special guest, I've got to send a special shout out. My son told me to make sure I did this today. To Charlie, Slough, and Ollie, big Arsenal fans. Shout out to you guys. Big up yourself, all right? But we got Graham joining us tonight. How you doing, Graham?
Robbie, nice to be back on again. How are you, mate?
No, it's great to have you on, man. I'm good. How have you been doing?
Not too bad. Just obviously, you know me, I'm still working.
Yeah.
Still working. Obviously, the only thing, my mum's not very well at the moment, so
Oh, sorry to hear that.
so I've had to move in with my mum at the moment to take care of my mum. So I just hope that she comes through this. She's struggling with an infection in her leg at the moment, but at the end of the day, we're going through unprecedented times. So I can't complain about my lot. Just nice to get the old Arsenal shirt back on again.
Yeah, trust me, get the badge on, man. You know what I mean? Because what is it, 7 weeks now with no football?
Yeah, something. I mean, March the 7th was the last game I went to. So that's about 8 weeks, isn't it? I mean, I made the fatal mistake, Robbie, of saying that I would never get a new Arsenal shirt till we won the league again. So I'm going to be stuck in this Invincible shirt, I think, for the rest of my life.
Yeah, but put it this way, you save a lot of money.
I'll buy the shirts for my son, don't I?
Okay. So they still get you somehow.
They get me somehow, yeah. And to be honest with you, he's got a great collection of shirts, my son Cameron. So I buy shirts for him.
Yeah, so it's what a shirt, right? You know what shirt I missed out on this season when they brought that bruised banana one back out.
Yeah,
I was gutted, man. Yeah. I wanted that. I swear I'm going to get in contact with Ian Wright and say, come on, man, you've got your links at Adidas, man. Sort me out. Because I was trying to get it and then I heard that they only did like a limited amount.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gutted about it, man.
Just before you start, I have to say I've been watching the content, and the thing is, I'm coming on a day today where there's not a lot to talk about, and the content that you've been putting out the last few days has been outstanding. I mean, the All Guns with DT, I thought that was absolutely brilliant. I thought the guest you've had on, Lee Chappie, he was excellent last week. I really enjoyed that show.
He was good, yeah.
And the stuff you put out with Claude and with Troops has been really good. It's been really enjoyable to watch.
No,
and also a big shout out to Glenn. If anyone hasn't seen Glenn in New York, I thought that was so funny.
Glenn is absolutely hilarious, man. He's absolutely hilarious. And that lockdown video in New York. What did he say? If he wanted to practice social distance.
Yeah, he come out with. I mean, the thing that he said something. If I wanted the social distance, I would sleep with the wife. But, that was funny. And the other thing is, he got Lee Judges as Gandalf, didn't he?
Yeah. Honestly, he's so funny, that guy, man. He's brilliant. Absolutely. If you haven't yet,
talking of the Gandalf beard, you notice the beard's gone.
Yeah, but how are you looking so sharp? I mean, the hairstyle. Beard's gone, you know what I mean? Everybody else is, I even see like footballers struggling, you know what I mean? I even saw DJ Khaled, you know what I mean? Beard overgrown, and normally he's always sharp, and you're looking sharp, man. How do you pull that off?
Oh, I don't want to give me secrets away, Robbie. I'll get arrested.
You're looking good, man. Listen, great to have you on tonight. The big subject today is all about this thing about the fans at the game. We know already that games are probably going to be played behind closed doors. If it resumes, which, there's a lot of talk that it will resume. Now, the FA chairman today,
Greg
Clark, he's come out today and he said that it could be played behind closed doors, not just to finish the season off, but even the 2020-21 season could be played behind closed doors. Now, I don't know what you think about it. For me, if that was to happen, it would be devastating for football. I think, and obviously these things are dictated by the coronavirus and how quickly we can get a cure and how quickly we can get some sort of order going back with the social distancing or whatever we do, or tracing or but it will kill football if there's no fans. I think this one of the things that we've realised with this whole thing is that football without fans, it's not. I think this guy here breaks it down perfectly here. The Beast Copycat, he says football without fans is no. He's saying is football. I'm saying is not football. What do you think about it, Graham?
Well, I think it would be a huge risk bringing it back if it wasn't the product that it was. And the product that it is for me would be compromised without the fans. The fans make football. But it does tell you pretty much the state that football finds itself in and how they think of the fans, doesn't it? And they, to be fair, I mean, we have no vaccine at the moment. And I think football needs to wake up. Football's not a special case. Football needs to be committed to ending the season when it's safe to do so with the fans. But unfortunately, there is the problem that clubs could go bankrupt around TV deals, lack of match day money coming in, merchandise not being sold, hospitality, etc., burgers being sold in the grounds. And football is under pressure because basically money, as always, is dictating what is happening. But football without fans, for me, is not football. And I think the product will be seriously damaged if it's played behind closed doors for a number of reasons. One, the atmosphere. Fans make the atmosphere. Players don't play so well. I think when you've seen those games behind closed doors without fans, and you made a great point in one of your previous shows about the difference between when we played Olympiacos with fans, and they were vociferous fans, weren't they? And when they played Wolves without fans, I mean, it was almost like dead, wasn't it? It was dead. And the product would be, would people enjoy the product? Can you imagine Bournemouth v Brighton without fans? And and also the fact if there's no relegation to play for, which is another topic I think we should talk about tonight. Who would be interested in a game like that? But I think fans are the lifeblood of the game, Robbie. And without fans, I think the product it'd be a risk. The product could be damaged, seriously damaged.
I mean, so there's a couple of the things they're trying to do to try and lighten the fact that there'll be no fans, and this is what they're talking about doing from now until the end of the season would be to on Sky and BT Sport, the football would be free. You wouldn't have to pay for it. You'd be able to get it free. And also, there's talk that they could show some games on YouTube as well. So they could be showing, like they showed the Champions League final, that's on YouTube. That they might show some Premier League games on YouTube free as well. So that could help to soften the blow. But is that fans there?
Yeah. Is that just to get this season finished, or is that?
I think it's a this season thing where they're looking at it and they're saying to themselves, there'll be no fans there, and obviously they, if they have this rule that they normally have, which is, they have those games on 3 o'clock on a Saturday, which are not televised. Then they have the other games that are televised. But basically, they understand. I think they get it already that the product will be severely damaged if you're only going to be able to watch it if you can afford to pay for it. Remember, you wouldn't even be able to say to yourself, if you haven't got Sky or BT Sport, you can't turn around and say, all right, we're going to go down the pub and watch it, because they'll be closed off, because that's gathering as well. So they're looking and saying to themselves, well, if we make it free, that protects the product, because everybody's going to be able to watch the big games or watch all games free to air on TV. So that's one of the things they're exploring. But they're obviously realizing, for once, at last, they're realizing the importance of fans.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, just extending the argument a bit wider than the fans, I just think that to get it going, not only would be a compromise in the product, it will be a kick in the nuts for fans. And I don't think the players would like it either. The players who would literally then have to not be with their families, they would have to be in quarantine, in effect, I would say. I don't think they could go home to their families because of the risk of passing it on. It would mean 100,000 tests at the end of the football season, which would not sit well if key workers weren't getting the kit. Football is a contact sport as well. So I just wonder with social distancing how they get around that. And then the other thing is around players' contracts. A lot of players' contracts run out on June the 30th. Now, the integrity of the game, they run the risk in trying to get this season finished without fans. Just for the financial side of it, of certain clubs, players have got contract on June the 30th. Just imagine if you've got, say, for example, Charlton playing Leeds. Leeds win, they go up. Charlton got all those players now, possibly out of contract on June the 30th. I'm just using a loose example. I haven't checked out if that is the case. But there's bound to be cases like this. The integrity of the actual match will be compromised by the fact that one club might not be able to put out his strongest team. It wouldn't have the depth if players are out of contract. So there's all these things to consider. But I think the big thing is that, you know, we love our football and fans want to go, but fans want to go when it's safe to do so. And it's just a shame that they're going to have to, if they are going to go down this route. It's a shame for the fans. It's a shame for the product. The product runs the risk, I think, of being ruined if it comes back. It would be a risk to the product, Robbie.
And one of the things that the football over here in the Premier League, one of the reasons why it's so popular around the world is the fact that like literally every game you see is packed. You know what I mean? You can look sometimes. You look, say, Serie A, and like even teams like Napoli and that, this stadium will be half full. Roma half full. You know what I mean? You look in Spain sometimes. You know, obviously Barcelona, Real Madrid packed, but you look at the other teams when they're playing, not always packed. Bundesliga is always packed. Premier League's always packed. Always great atmospheres in the thing, and that's one of the big selling points of it. Now, I kind of think to myself that I could take it from now the last 10 games because I get it, and they're trying to finish the season, and I'd understand that. But if we go into next season and there's no fans for a whole season, that's going to be weird to me. I mean, that's not going to, that's, I don't know how, I can't even, it's hard to contemplate, but that's what they're talking about.
Yeah, and Greg Clark has virtually come out and said that today, that next season, 2021, not 2020, 2021, could be played behind closed doors, isn't he? He said that today. So there's a real fear of that. Yeah. And it's not, it wouldn't be the same product, Robbie. And I could see people, the real diehard fans would support their clubs, but I think the product would be severely damaged, and certain people would lose interest in the product. That's what I think. Yeah,
this guy says the love for the game will be forgotten without fans. So that's what he's saying. This guy, I knew this one was going to come. He said, except Man City Stadium. Man City Stadium is not always empty. I'm sure that's a United fan. You know, it's just I find it hard to imagine. You know,
I just can't imagine. I've got to be honest with you. I don't. Obviously, my club. I love my club, as you know, and I'd always watch Arsenal games, and I would tolerate it. But I wouldn't be interested so much in watching other games without the atmosphere and all the things that go on with fans in the stadium. That's part of the enjoyment for me.
Yeah, this guy's saying that. Media Centre Man says, I prefer no football than behind closed doors. And I'd like to get people's opinions on that, actually, with whether they prefer none at all, or they're like, well, listen, at least it's football, you know, because there are a lot of people that I've spoken to saying, yeah, you know what, I don't care, man, just I'll take anything right now. Right now, I think yes, but in the future, you know.
But what you've got to remember also is the point I made earlier, that if they do put it back on, that is to get football season finished across all the various leagues, you're looking at 100,000 test kits before the end of the season. Now, that would not sit well, as I said, if it denied key people, and you know I work in a key industry, from getting test kits. And I think football would seem to be very selfish then. And I just don't know how you get away from this contradiction about contact sport, where everyone else is social distancing, and footballers are, albeit they're being tested and they're in quarantine. And I think footballers wouldn't like that. But they are, no matter how rich they are, I think some of them have come out and said that they don't want to play. And then the clubs have turned around and said, from what I've heard today, the clubs have turned around and said, well, if you don't play, we ain't going to pay you. Now, some of them probably wealthy enough to say, well, stick it up your arse, you know, but others will play, won't they? And they're being forced back to work, in effect, because football is all about money, isn't it? It's all about money. And me personally, if you're asking me, Robbie, football needs to wake up and accept that we've got no vaccine, and football's not a special case. And I think it should be put on hold and come back when it's safe to do so. And that's my view.
What about this suggestion? I think this could be Chris Hudson. If it is big up, that's Chris Hudson. Big up Chris Hudson. Chris Hudson, legend. I've got come on, Chris, man. We got to get you on here, by the way.
Yeah,
we've got to get you on here, right? So we got to get Chris on, right? But Chris says, and this is a great suggestion. What about start the season in January till October to negate the fact that we got this coronavirus? That would give us, we're already hearing a lot about vaccines. There's various countries working on vaccines at the moment. There's people that I've spoken to. I mean, again, I don't know if this the guy from the FA is panicking, right? I spoke to a friend of mine in Hong Kong yesterday, right? And he said to me that basically they're more or less back to normal, is what he was saying to me. He goes, but you got to wear a mask. You go to a lot of places, they take your temperature. They're doing the tracing. There's a lot of things that's kind of starting to come in to try and deal with these things. So starting it in January would give it enough time to get all these things sorted out, and then maybe we go from there. That's not a bad suggestion, is it?
No, a lot of respect for Chris, as you know. Me personally, I don't think football should put any date on anything until it's safe, and I think they should keep saying different dates and all that. I think is risky. I think we should just wait until it's safe to play. Keep putting pressure, saying we need, this date or that date. I would like to see it put on hold, Robbie. That's just my opinion.
All right. This gentleman's Amir says to uphold the integrity of the game, matches need to be played. Even without fans, integrity will not be compromised. We need closure. So he's saying that football should go ahead, and certainly, this is not a thing where I've seen a lot of people criticize the clubs and things like that, saying, and you sort of suggested it's money, but remember, they're even backed by the government on this. The government want to get football started as well. They're keen to get football and sports started as soon as they can, because they recognize the psychological value of sport being back on and taking people's mind off it. And also you start to feel that things are starting to return back to normal when you see sport being played.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fair argument, and that is fair enough, because mental health is just as important as physical health. But look, there's two arguments there, isn't there? Me personally, I think, for me, I always think about safety and about people's health, physical health, and I just worry.
It's your job coming out.
Yeah, that's the shop steward in me coming out as a union sort of rep. But the end of the day, that's a fair argument, of course. But what would happen, for example, if football came back and somebody connected to football died as a result? Then there would be a massive outcry, wouldn't there?
Yeah.
And we've already seen that they're trying to get the season back going in Germany. Already players are testing positive in Cologne or wherever it was.
3 in Cologne, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just saying it's a massive risk, Robbie.
Nanny28 says, do you think fans won't come outside the stadium when the match is on? I remember the other day, the guy in charge, the mayor of Liverpool, said, if you started the season and say Liverpool win the title, loads of people will come outside the ground. You won't be able to stop them because they want to come and celebrate, behind closed doors or not.
Yeah, there's a danger of that. I just wonder how they would police it. They would probably stop people from getting towards the ground, wouldn't they? I would have thought. Yeah, there is, of course, a massive risk there. And what about yourself? Would you be around the stadium doing the interviews?
Well, no. There'd be nobody to interview, wouldn't it? There'd be no one to interview because everybody would be at home, so there'd be nobody to interview.
We just turn up. We watch it on TV and just turn up for the interview.
That's true. Social distancing.
Joking aside, that is a risk, and I do remember the mayor of Liverpool saying that, and that is a very good point he made.
Some more comments, loads of comments coming in. Thank you very much for all of these. Daniel said, footballers should return to work when everybody else does. Graham says no special treatment for footballers. So there you go. Well, hold on. A lot of people, we're being told, and Graham, in your job, you know this, that by the end of this week, a lot of people will be returning to work. And remember, they're saying return to work unless you can work from home. Now, you can't play football from home, can you? No. So if a guy who I don't know, a postman. Yeah, we was chatting to Lee Chappie the other day. He does that as a job.
Yeah.
A postman's still got to go work, right?
Well, he's going to work now, isn't he? He's going to work now.
He's going to work now, and when restrictions are eased, he will still have to be going to work. Yeah. So a footballer, his work is on the pitch. So if other people are going to be returning to work, it's not special treatment to say they should return to work too.
No, Robbie, a footballer has not got a key job, has he?
No, but we're saying that at the end of this week, right? We don't know it. All the things that are leaking out is that they're going to be saying to a lot of people, return back to work, unless not just that you're a key worker, return back to work unless you can work at home. Now, a footballer can't work at home, can he? He's got to go in. He's got to go play on a pitch. So that wouldn't be special treatment. That'd be them going to do their job.
Well, I think that I don't think it's that simple with footballers, is it? To be honest, look, we'll have to wait and see what the government say. The government, for me, have put out a lot of, I don't want to get into politics, but a lot of mixed messages. I'll just wait and see what they say. But if it's, as I say, I'll stick to what I say. I think football should only return when it's safe to do so. That's my view.
All right. This guy here says, right. He said it. Abdallah said, corporate manslaughter. You know a lot about this as well. Corporate manslaughter. If players and managers die from games, wake up. It's the Premier League's demise.
Do you know what, Robbie? I work in an industry where we've lost an individual in the last 2 weeks to COVID-19. So I see the effect that had. So I think football does need to wake up. I say to you, I know the players will probably be isolated away from their families, which they won't like. I think that's what's going to happen. But just imagine if somebody picked it up around the ground, working to the club, and passed it on to a member of the family, and they passed away. Football would have serious questions to answer. But look, football is a massive product, is a massive money spinner. I think clubs are going to be, this Friday's meeting on June the 12th, I think those clubs who said last week, Robbie, that they don't want to come back because they fear lots of things, the integrity of the sport, particularly the clubs down the bottom of the table, they're going to be forced to come back because of TV money they've received or whatever, bankruptcy possibilities. I think that, again, they will be forced back by money. And I think it just shows you how rich the game is, doesn't it?
Dr. Viraj says, absolutely agree with Graham. The English FA should not prioritise money over people's lives. In the end, all it takes is one positive case and the cycle will repeat itself. But then you could say that for every job, for every. I mean, when do we come back out? I mean, I know this sounds, especially in light of what you just said about somebody dying that at your workplace. My cousin had it. I've got a friend who had it, who was told at the time he only had a 20% chance of survival. Thankfully, he did survive. It's terrible. It's horrible, but. When do we emerge from this? Do we have to wait until it's completely gone before we come back out again? Because then not just football, everything will be left in ruin. There's going to have to be a time when we're going to have to take a risk, isn't there? I
don't think that time is yet. That's my view. I do think, you are right that we're a long way away from a vaccine. But I just think, we need to be careful. You only have to look back in history to 1919 when they had the Spanish flu, and they went into lockdown and they came out too early, and then there was a second massive wave of killings, wasn't there? So that's what you'll be careful of. So I think they've got to be really careful how they do this. And I get all the things about people's well-being, about the sport lifting people's morale. And all that, and I understand all that, and obviously football. But I think football is being a little bit selfish here. It's about the money. It's purely about the money, and that's what really pisses me off, to be honest. That it's all about money.
Killer Boy B says, Robbie, what are they going to do when a player gets infected and the entire team needs to be quarantined? Do you put the season back on hold, or do you just, I think it says, disqualify that team or force them to find reserve players? And then VJ says, even if one fan passes away due to COVID-19, caught up grounds and the fans will turn on the clubs and the league.
That's a really good point, isn't it? Really, really good point. And I think what they'll do is if somebody's tested positive, they'll be under enormous pressure to shut the league straight down. And then where does that leave everybody after that?
George says,
so for me, look, it makes common sense that they wait a little bit longer. They don't put any time barrier on it or dates. As I said, football's not a special case, but it needs to be. Everybody wants the season finished, Robbie, and that's without doubt. But if we have to wait, we have to wait, don't we? And I think we can wait a little bit longer. That's just my view.
George says, Robbie, I think Graham is right. If we go back playing and someone dies, then the FA will be in big trouble. Well, I like that. I like the idea that Chris Hudson said. Why don't, I mean, that's a good idea. Say to yourselves, we start in January. That gives loads of time. I mean, I've just got a feel. I'm trying to be optimistic about this thing.
You don't know what's going to happen, do you? We're now in April.
I don't know what's going to happen next year.
We don't know where we're going to be. But we don't know where we're going to be towards the end of the year, Robbie. We
don't know where we're going to be, Graham. We've got to make plans, haven't we? We can't just. Otherwise, this thing's defeating us. Then, if we just say, right, that's it. Nobody go outside until we've got 0 cases. We're never gonna get out of this, are we? We're never gonna. We've got to have a plan from now to start emerging from this, to start coming out of this. And, that's a bigger plan than football. Obviously, that involves testing. That, as I said, I've spoken to some people who've been in other countries that are starting to emerge from this. And, they're saying that, things are starting to return back to normal. They're wearing masks. They're, doing tracing. They're taking people's temperatures and they're starting to emerge from it. Now, I understand what you're saying. Of course, there can be a second wave. Of course, we can't wait until there's 0 cases, can we?
I'm not saying wait for 0 cases, but at the moment, people are still dying. And all right, it's that there's less deaths. We are over the peak at the moment. We just got to be careful we don't have a second wave. I think, look, what Chris said is, I'm not dismissing it. I'm not saying that it's a valid point he makes. And to be honest with you, they could sort of like put it to the back of their mind to say, look, let's look at going around that time. But I still think they have to see where we are. But I think the league's under enormous pressure to start way before when Chris is saying. And I've got this funny feeling that this week they will vote to restart the league season in mid-June.
Berserker says if a player catches flu and gives it to their grandparents, they could die. So I don't see how the Premier League can be sued by players. It's the players' responsibility. If they don't want to play, don't play.
No, but I think the thing is, who said that, Robbie? But whoever said that, the players would be isolated away from their families for the 8 to 10 weeks that the football is going to be played. So they wouldn't be near their families in that time.
Exactly.
And then they would be tested, wouldn't they?
Yeah. So what's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with that.
Away from their families, and they're tested, and the cases have come right down, and they're away from their families, and they're testing them. What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with that in terms of they won't be passed on to their families. But what's wrong with that for footballers is that they wouldn't want to be away from their families for 8 to 10 weeks, would they?
But then you know what? In a way, right? I'm gonna sympathise, and this is gonna people are gonna think I'm heartless now. People are gonna think I'm heartless, right? But I'm gonna sympathise with the clubs here, right? Now they can't furlough these players and stuff like that because they get criticised. Everyone slates them off and says, "Look how much money you got," blah 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 blah. And then they've got players that are sat at home at the moment that can't play, and they're having to pay them. In someone like Mesut Ozil's case, for instance, 350 grand a week, 200 grand a week.
Why do you always have to keep bringing up Mesut Ozil?
All right, I shouldn't be. It's the amount, isn't it? But listen, they're paying players a lot of money. Yeah. And at the moment, those players are sat at home, yeah? So if the clubs turn around and say, right, you know what? The government are saying conditions are improving. We've come up with a plan to get everybody back, right? Other people are going back to work in various jobs, and they're at a bit of a risk as well. We want you to come back and play. And a player turns around and says, no, I don't feel safe. I agree with the club. They shouldn't pay them. You know what I mean? What would you, with the club, what do you want me to do? I'd be the club. I'd be like, well, what do you want me to do? I mean, we can't pay you then.
Robbie, I work in an industry where that's exactly what I've been arguing against. Trying to keep people on paid. But look, the clubs would be justified, wouldn't they, in saying that? The clubs,
yeah.
if that footballer didn't have a special case why he could not play football, he would have to play. And if he didn't play, he wouldn't be paid. So that's
So that's what I'm saying. You know what you were saying earlier. If it's all right for players to say, "Oh, I'm scared. I don't want to play," and I understand that. Don't get me wrong. I understand that completely. Right? We only have to think about Pep Guardiola. His mum died from this. So if Pep Guardiola turned around and said, "You know what? I just don't want to do anything whilst this is going on."
So where'd you go then when the manager? Robbie, where'd you go then if the manager says, I do not want to manage my football club for the last 10 games because I'm scared, my mother has passed away with this illness. There's players saying, I don't want to play, I'm scared of playing, right? And then you have a situation where the league games take place where, imagine if a team gets relegated because the team they were playing, 6 of the top players of that club didn't want to play because they were scared. The ramifications of this go far wider.
Then you get awarded the points, wouldn't you?
I'm just saying, but then the whole league is compromised. The integrity of the league is compromised, isn't it? So
you can't just keep paying people to stay at home, can you? Even like a lot of people are getting paid at the moment with the furlough thing. It ain't going to last forever. No,
it's not. But I think it's too soon. Robbie, it's too soon to start the league season up at the moment. Just too soon. I think we need to wait a little bit longer
at this moment. But what I'm saying is, if the case, I heard today is about 200 and odd deaths, which is 200 too many.
There's 28,000 deaths in this country, Robbie. Over 20 that they've counted. 28,000.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, the cases are starting to reduce now. The hospital that they opened in London, the Nightingale Hospital, to cope with the deluge of cases that they were going to get, they're actually at the moment there's nobody really in there because the cases have reduced so much. So the regular hospitals are coping with what the cases are now. Now, if it continues to come down and the government deems that it's safe now for people to start, not fully get back to normal, but starting to emerge to get back to normal, then you spin it round on the other thing. Then why can't football? If I'm, there'll be a guy saying, "Well, you know what? If I can go back to work, what's wrong with them? Why are they sat at home? Why can't they go back to work? What makes them a special case?" It's the same sort of way in which it spins back the other way, isn't it? Which is one of the reasons why footballers get unfairly criticised, I suppose. But if ordinary Joes like us start going back to work.
Believe me, in the industries where they've been working, right, the sick levels have gone through the roof, I assure you. So people have not been working. Now, what's been happening in these key industries, there's been higher sick leave, and they've been bringing in agency workers, for example, in one industry to cover because people don't feel safe at work and have gone off, or people are isolating or gone sick. So the argument is really difficult, and it's not as simple as you paint out. And I think that we should respect the fact that footballers, they're massively well paid. If they don't feel safe playing, they should not be asked to play, and they might have to not be paid by the clubs. But I'm pretty sure they're wealthy enough to sort of say, okay, don't pay me for 8 weeks.
Some, Graham. Remember, it's not just the Premier League. Remember, we got the Championship and all those leagues below, and they're not on 100 grand a week. You know what I mean? And those guys, they'll be feeling it in their pocket, a lot of them.
Well, they'll have to make the decision like everybody else. No matter what walk of life you're in, Robbie, you make that decision, don't you? If you need to work, you need the money, and you have to work, don't you? So some of those people won't be as fortunate as Sergio Aguero. So it's a difficult, and everybody has to make their own decision. As simple as that. But I do think we're turning the corner. I think we're going in the right direction. But I just think that football, you know, from what I've read over the last week about the meeting this week, and clubs not really wanting to play, but clubs are going to be forced to play, and that's disappointing for me.
Loads of comments coming in. Ashanal says, Robbie, we're still months and a half away from getting the season, and things will get better. Just imagine today we have 300 deaths. In a month's time, it will be 50 deaths, which is still 50 too many. It's horrible that we're talking about it in that way, but I see what the point he's trying to make in that the deaths are coming down. Even though it's a horrible thing to say.
I just think we need to err on the side of caution, Robbie. We just don't want a second wave. All right, so I think maybe thinking about it, and Chris Hudson, someone I respect enormously, maybe the point he makes is a good one. Maybe we should look to start it at the end of the year. That's
pretty much. I've got another one for you, right? And everybody, because I just saw this guy's comment. Papa Nabry says, I can't see 20,000 fans in the stand anytime soon. But what about if at the Emirates, for instance, right? 60,000, you let people back in, but with social distancing. So just like you've seen, like I saw a press conference the other day. It was one of Trump's ones, and everybody.
They're brilliant, isn't it?
They're entertaining, they are. They're entertaining, Trump's ones, right? So you've got the reporters sitting socially distanced. I remember they're talking about bringing that social distance down to 1 meter instead of 2 meters. That's another thing that might happen this week, right? So if you've got 1 meter social distance, everyone's wearing masks,
including the players.
Including the players, right? Couldn't you have a game with some fans in there?
Well, again, you've got to think outside the box. Everybody's got to travel to the game.
Outside the box.
Well, on the halfway line. You've got to think that people got to travel to the stadium, haven't they? So how's that going to be controlled? It's bigger than just when they get to the ground. And you know how difficult it is to get people in the ground at the moment. Just imagine people turning up for 3 o'clock kickoff. So
that's it. I mean, that might be one positive is that when this thing's finished, right?
Everyone will be turning up at 11 o'clock.
Get there early, because I'll tell you what. Based on what a lot of people have been telling me in other countries, they'll bring in this thing where they test your temperature.
Yeah.
So, you know, like at the moment when you go to the Emirates and you're walking up and they take all your bags and all that. I think that one of the things we will see when football comes back around is that you walk up and they take your temperature like that. That means if you've gone down the pub and you've had one too many, they'll be like, no. That's if any pubs will be open again. That's another.
That's the other thing, you know. As I said to you, it's bigger than just social distancing in the stadium. It's social distancing on the way to the stadium, around the stadium, in the bars. It's so difficult, isn't it? It's not an easy thing. I just think that they need to be very careful about a second wave, and I think that I would hate to see it come back at the moment for the wrong reasons. But I can understand why.
Yeah. Lots of questions. Lots of honestly, it's going.
I was thinking, Robbie. If football is suspended for roughly 5,545 days, Tottenham will get to 10,000 days without a trophy. It does have its positives. You know what
I mean? Andrew Chow with a super chat. He says, "Hi both. You've both given valid points. Just one from me. Have you heard loads from owners and managers? It appears they don't want to give their views." That's a good point.
I think our manager, Robbie, I think Mikel Arteta has been very proactive in doing a lot of things around getting players to agree to pay cuts. And also because he was affected himself, he has gone on and said about people need to stay safe. I've seen videos from Mikel Arteta where he's turned around and talked about doing the right things. So in answer to that, yes, we haven't heard much from owners.
Ain't heard much from other managers, though, have you?
No, Mikel Arteta, our manager, has come out and said the right things.
Ain't heard nothing. Heard nothing from many from owners and Well, actually, Arrow, we never hear from our owner anyway, so it don't really matter. Oh, Mr. A.
The thing about Stan Kroenke is that he started the social distancing from Arsenal long before the fans.
Mr. A says, I'm starting to think if it was Don Robbie who said, football isn't a matter of life or death, it's more important than that. And not Bill Shankly.
That's Bill Shankly. Yeah, and to be honest with you, that is probably that. If they're going to start it up, they could use the Shankly quote, couldn't they?
Yeah. Oh boy. Peter says, Robbie, they are reopening Atlanta, and now we're seeing 1,000 cases a day. The world is just not ready to reopen. Doctors are now saying it's looking like one of those viruses that we'll have to live with.
Mm. Well, I think they'll get a vaccine. They're testing at the moment, aren't they? Are they testing people at the moment, or the vaccine? Well, I think there will be a vaccine, but not for another year, will there?
Yeah, Donald said, man. Donald said you can use your bleach. Don't try that at home. Don't try that at home. Ricard says, Robbie, please read this. There are still many people who are going to work normally to win money. I think he's saying to earn money because they make the rent, etc. Players should go to work as well. Well, that's a point. That's what I'm saying. That's a point, isn't it? That's a point. Nice says, could this be the end of the football? Could this be the end of football as we know it?
Well, I'd just like to re-emphasise the fact that the product could be severely damaged if it, by it's a risk, isn't it, to bring it back without fans and do it behind closed doors. It is a risk, no matter what you say. It is a risk. I mean, if it has to be, it has to be. But it is a massive risk. The Premier League is a wonderful product, and we could be seeing. Remember that it started off. You're going to be finishing a season totally different to the way it started. Is that not damaging the product? Does that damage Liverpool? If they win it in that way, does that in any way take value out of the fact they're league champions? They would have won it anyway, but I accept that. And to be honest with you, I want the league played out, and I want Liverpool to win the league. They have been the best team. But I'm just saying, does that devalue Liverpool if we play it out in that way?
Rico says, what does Graham think about the UEFA coefficient table if the season is cancelled? Meaning that Arsenal being back in the Champions League, Liverpool better luck next time. Sorry, I don't think that would happen, isn't it? They said under some other rules that wouldn't happen and that we'd actually wouldn't be in any European football. Hence, one of the reasons why they're saying that also one of the clubs that are the most keen to get the league finished. Yeah,
so I think you're right there. That's what I read. We are keen to get it going. I think the big six. I think that there is a danger. You haven't. I don't know if you explored this in one of your other shows, of the big six, sort of like of a possible breakaway if the big six don't get what they want. I don't know if you think that's a danger.
That is a danger. That is a danger because we've seen for a long time the big six would love to, well, not necessarily love to, but they've spoken a lot about breaking away. And this could present that opportunity, couldn't it? Danik says the word is Arsenal will have to offload players to pay for Pepe's transfer sum. What are your expectations for Pepe for the coming season?
Well, I'd like to think that in his second season he would really come into his own. Obviously, this season was pretty much. Probably we would say he underperformed. I think he was getting better under Arteta. The last few weeks I saw an improvement in him. So I think this season, the second season, I expect him to be at a good level and being the player we hoped he would be. So, but behind closed doors. I think that. But just going back to the gentleman's point, there is a danger that clubs are going to have to sell players to meet their wage bill. And I know me and you talked about it off air before we came on, but if that Newcastle takeover goes ahead, and with financial fair play rules, I think are being relaxed, Newcastle could go in and cherry pick the best players from clubs who would have to sell because they couldn't afford the wages. And the likes of Jack Grealish, Declan Rice, and players like that, you know, that they could sort of end up playing for a club who's got the money, like the club, the financial club that Newcastle.
Actually, let's touch on that in a second. We'll touch on that in a second, actually. Yeah. Again, Ben says we won't play any football around the European leagues next season, so give Liverpool the title and forget about the top four because it won't even happen for any team. We will play domestic football only. We don't know that yet. I mean, I'm trying to be positive, man. You know what I mean? I'm one of these people that if we're too negative, we talk it into existence. I do believe in that, right? You know what I mean? We've got to be positive that we will have European football next season. But going back to the point that you said, Graham, there's been talk that they might relax financial fair play for a couple of seasons to enable clubs to get back on their feet, enable clubs to spend money, big money, or put cash injections in if they want without breaking the rules. Now, for a club like Newcastle that are about to be taken over by Saudi owners, that's going to make them a major force. We've seen in the past. I mean, there was somebody who was saying to me the other day, "Oh yeah, but Newcastle, no chance, they won't win it." I said, "Why not?" I said, "We've seen it with Chelsea, we've seen it with Manchester City. You can buy success. You can go out there and you can, like you just said, buy all the best players around." Because you can pay them a king's ransom in wages and they'll be able to get away with it because there'll be no financial fair play. So again, this is very troubling for Arsenal, isn't it? It again sends us further down the pecking order.
Yeah, and it could mean that we have to get certain players off our wage bill. You know, so we are, because of the mess that Gazidis and Wenger left us in with players on massive wages. If we can't get rid of them, we might have to sell some players to cut the wage bill. And Newcastle, as you say, will be in a great position to go to clubs who couldn't afford to keep players on the wages to take them off their hands. That is just a fact of football life, isn't it?
All right, comments are still flooding in. Z says, Graham, I disagree. Aston Villa is owned by multi-billionaires and all the top 6 owners are also multi-billionaires. All of these clubs can afford to pay wages if they want to win. Apart from our one. Canbar says, behind closed doors, moaning needs to stop. People dying all the time from all other diseases that people don't care about. 1,000 die in the UK daily from diseases. So I think he's saying stop. Whoa, that's a bit, that's a bit militant, Canbar. Yeah. I hear his point on that, but listen, this is different, what we're going through at the moment, because there's no, you know, I mean, I think, again, our friend Trump, right, actually, it weren't Trump. It was another one of, I was watching, one of the Republicans, anyway. I think it's Giuliani. He was making the comparison between the amount of people that die from cancer daily and things like that, in comparison to the amount of people that are dying from COVID-19. But I think what they forgot to realize is that it can't be spread. You can't spread cancer, can you? It's terrible and people die from it, but it doesn't spread from person to person. That is the difference with this one, is that I can just come up to you, shake your hand, and you got it. That's how serious this thing is. Until we got to find a way to stop this, you know, and that is the thing.
The only way we're going to stop it is to ultimately get the vaccine, isn't it? I mean, just coming back to the guy's point, I stand corrected on Jack Grealish in the fact that Villa have got expensive owners. But I was talking about the principle, you know, that Newcastle could, any club that's struggling to pay the wages of their players, who needs to get players off their wage bill, but Newcastle will be able to come along and just take them if they got those rich Saudi owners without financial fair play. That's the point I'm making. Without a
doubt. We've seen it so many times. We've seen it. So, you know, this is pretty harsh, isn't it? This guy said, Don Robbie, there's enough bleach in Graham's hair to cure COVID. When do we draw? And then he says, when do we draw the line in this season? Hello from New Zealand. It's not.
I've always wanted to go to New Zealand. That's one of the few places I haven't been to. So yeah, there's plenty of bleach in my hair. I'll give him that.
Stephen says football died after the 90s for me, and I think he said I couldn't care one iota about the fans anymore. Well, I hear you, bro, but for me, I love football still, and we've got to try. I think we do need to try to find a way to get it back on.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, but as I say, I mean,
give us a suggestion, Graham, because you give me a bit of doom and gloom. Give me a suggestion.
Look, I've said to you, I think football should not set any targets. We should wait until it's safe to do so. I stick by that. But look, if you want me to look for a compromise, I'll go with Chris Hudson. Let's look at this sort of like review it towards the end of the year.
I like that idea because that gives enough time for things to, So I like that idea. Let's get some more in. He says, I hate how everyone thinks that Newcastle's takeover will result in money being invested into the club. What if all the Saudi owners wanted to do was to invest in a historically proud club? Look at listen, come on, man. Saudi owners are not going to be crunky. They're not. They're coming in to win. Especially, I don't know if people know there's a bit of history at the moment and between Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Do you think the Saudi guys, when they invest in Newcastle, are going to want to see Man City and teams like Man City owned by Qatar is getting one over them? They're going in. They're going to spend big. It's a threat to every club. And it's great if you're a Newcastle fan, but it's a threat to every club.
I don't know if people are noticing, Robbie, but I'm getting darker and darker now because the lighting's going here.
What happened to your light?
Could you just click me out for a minute? I want to put the light on. Just click me out for a minute, mate.
All right, let me click you out a second. What's happened to his light? Must he like back in the day paraffin eater, right? This gentleman says, big up Don Robbie, huge fan from Saudi Arabia. Hold on, let me get Graham back in here. Let me see if I can get Graham back in. Oh, he did.
The thing is, for that New Zealand gentleman, I spent too much money on bleach. I can't afford to have a light.
What's in the light? How did it just fade like that?
Well, no, I'm sort of like at the back of the house. I've been banished to the back of the house to do this, you see. So, and obviously, when I started, it was light, wasn't it? It's sort of that.
Yeah, I thought it was the meter. Listen, man, I remember back in the day, I had the meter, boy. They had the meter going. You know what I mean? I had to just, charge up that key, bro. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
I felt like Claude there for a minute, actually. But just coming back to what we talked about, sort of like how it's going to affect clubs with Newcastle. I think we need to worry about what's going to happen with Arsenal. I've got no confidence in Kroenke putting money in the club for transfers, and I think DT was absolutely brilliant on the Blazing podcast. Why should we be paying money when he's not paying any money? He nailed it absolutely brilliantly, far better than I could ever do. But I'm thinking that this season, I've said it to you when I came on a couple of weeks ago, I think that we've got 7 young players who Arteta's going to have to develop, and I think we won't be paying out big money for players. I think we'll be looking at loan deals, and I would like to see us sort of like maybe sort of like the areas of the team that I would like to see. DT made a great point that I would love to see Coutinho come in if we could get him on loan. I don't know if we could. We couldn't afford him, but to get him on loan would be. And the other area that the team I think we need to look at. I've been saying it to you. I say it to you every interview I come on with you. I want a centre half, don't I? And again, Coutinho's at Barcelona, isn't he? Someone like Umtiti. If we could get him on loan, we couldn't afford to buy him, but we could take him on loan. He'd be a perfect partner for Saliba, wouldn't he?
But even then, we're going to have to offload to bring in. This guy here, Abdul Rahman, he says, big up Don Robbie, huge fan from Saudi Arabia, so he'll know what's going down. And he said, the Newcastle takeover is real. And that worries me as an Arsenal fan. If we don't get a clear plan for the next few years, we're going to get left behind. He is spot on. I'm telling you, these guys from Saudi Arabia, they're serious players. They got serious money, and they're not coming in to play second fiddle to Man City, Qatari owned, right? And he'll know what I'm talking about. There's a bit of history between the two countries. They're coming in to win the thing, and it's going to be like when Chelsea got the Abramovich money. And if, as you were saying to me before the show, I mean, I've heard it's speculation, but you're saying to me that it's almost certainly going to come in that the financial fair play rules will be relaxed. That's a serious threat to every team, but especially to teams like us that are trying to go with this model where we don't spend more than what we get, especially now when we could do with a cash injection.
It's a model that's been failing now for 15 years, Robbie. So it's not just a case of now. I think you need to sort of wake up, smell the coffee here. We've been left behind a long time by Abramovich came in and Chelsea haven't won the league for 50 years. Abramovich come in and they've won 16 trophies, right? In the time he's been.
Man City, what a day one.
Man City hadn't won the league for 50 odd years either. Then all of a sudden, be under no illusions. Be under no illusions, right? Yeah. Money can buy the leagues, right? Yeah.
Look, I've said this before, and just before I say this, let me just get his comment. Carol says, Graham talks perfect sense. We need to hope that Arteta can develop young players like Chelsea have done. But I've said this before, Graham, yeah? When it comes to money, look at every league literally across Europe, right? And the teams that spend the most money win the league, more or less. I know that Liverpool are going to win it this year, but Liverpool have still spent a lot of money. They've been very brilliant in how they've done their spending, but they've spent a lot of money. They've bought in Van Dijk, Alisson. I know you're going to say they sold, but they spent a lot of money. Man City are year in, year out now. They're at the top there. They spend the most money, yeah? PSG win the league every year in France. They spend the most money. In Italy, Juventus win the league literally every year now. They spend the most money. Every year they're winning it, year in, year out. In Germany, Bayern Munich spend the most money in that league. They win it nearly every year. Right? In Dutch football, Ajax, out of all those teams, even though they've got a limited budget in comparison to teams like us, they spend the most money, they win the league. In Scotland, Celtic, they spend the most money, they win the league. So anybody who thinks that Newcastle are not going to be a major contender when they come with this money, I don't think they're looking at this thing seriously, you know? Do
you know what? When I come on tonight, I was feeling really good. You've just depressed me in that last 18 seconds.
Just look at that. That is it. It's there for everybody to see. I don't care what anybody wants to say. In Spain, Real Madrid and Barcelona win the league. Literally, it's between them. They share it around. The odd time you might get an Atletico come in. Who, by the way, they spend quite a lot of money as well. But you'll get an Atletico come in. But basically, Barcelona, Real Madrid are able to spend the most money, buy the best players. They win the league. You'll have a few exceptions, like in the Premier League, you'll have a Leicester come along, once in a while and thing. But apart from Leicester, look at the teams that have won the league in the Premier League over the last 10 years. Chelsea, Man City.
Well, if you look at it, Blackburn won it when Jack Walker came in and invested heavily in the club. Even Leicester, as good as they were, they got some investment, didn't they, from a chairman who came in. I think that we've been left behind, as simple as that, because we've got an owner who doesn't want to invest. Yeah. And unfortunately, so where does that leave Arteta? It leaves him with, I've got a list here of our 7 young players
Sorry, just before you say that, Graham, just this guy, because I've had his comment up for a long. Berserker, he said, Newcastle spend means nothing. Leicester, even Spurs have challenged for the Premier League, spending relatively little. Well, Leicester won it, and that was an exception to the rule. Spurs challenged. They didn't win it, though. I'm on about winning. And as I said, I've just given you an example of right across Europe.
Leicester, Yeah,
We're
Leicester, Leicester, the only team that bucked the trend, weren't they? Leicester.
Yeah, the only team that bucked the trend, right? Right. But literally in every league across Europe, the team that spends the most normally wins the league.
Yeah, you can't argue against it. So, look, I've made a list here of 7 young players who I think Arteta's got to try and develop and we've got to sort of like, because we're not going to be spending wads of money on, £60 million on this player, £50 million on that player. So, like, I've got 7 players here: Tierney, Saka, Willock, Smith Rowe, Nelson, Martinelli, Nketiah. There's 7 young players who he's going to need to make even better this year. And around that, he's got to keep hold of Aubameyang, somehow keep hold of Aubameyang. Now, I've always said to you in the past, I think if a player goes into the last year of his contract, we need to sell him because what we've done in the past. But I'm really sort of against that at this time. I think we need to. It's just a shame that Arteta can't do what Alex Ferguson was really good at. You know what he did with Ronaldo? When Ronaldo wanted to go, and he said, "Just give me one more year, sign on for another year, and I'll let you go at the end of that year." Sort of like if he could do that. But I think we need to keep Aubameyang now at all costs, as simple as that. The only problem is with it, Robbie, against it, is we saw what happened with Sanchez. Now Sanchez wanted to go, and we took him into the last year of his contract. Not only did it have a destabilising effect in the dressing room, but Sanchez virtually down tools in the games. Now, if Aubameyang stays and he wants to go, the problem that the club are going to have is if he's not playing at the level. I don't think he's going to be like Sanchez, but I think there is the danger if you keep someone who wants to go. What is he going to do if Real Madrid come in and offer a lot of money? Now, so the scenario for me would be I would only sell him if we literally got a ridiculous fee where we could reinvest that with somebody as good as him. And there's not a lot of people out there as good as him.
By the way, I've been corrected quite rightly here. Ikem says, Robbie, the City's owners are from the UAE, not Qatar. Sorry, you are right there. Sponsored by the Etihad, a UAE company. But as I said, look at what they've done. And when the Saudi owners come in, they're going to want to top that. We know they're going to want to top that. So be under no illusion they're going to be coming hard, Newcastle. They will be a serious team to try and win the league. And, it worries me a lot. It worries me a lot.
We are literally I think you were talking to DT about it. We run the risk of becoming a top 8 team soon, don't we? When you think of that is the risk, because Leicester and Wolves are improving, and Wolves have had an injection of money. So why would they want to sell players? A bit like Aston Villa. Leicester have improved massively under Brendan Rodgers, and I think that was a really good piece of really good podcast you did with Lee Chappie about sort of how many Arsenal players would get into that Leicester team, how many Spurs players would get into the Leicester team.
Yeah, we did that. We actually did that on. We actually did it on Saturday when we had expressions on, and it was even less. Spurs.
Did you get a word in with expressions?
You don't.
I was thinking, right, sort of like going back to the Dele Alli thing. I did a joint Chelsea. He mentioned about they're up there with Chelsea, almost like because he sees them at Chelsea's level now. I think that, which is absolute cobblers, because basically Chelsea have won 3 trophies in the last 3 years. Spurs have won nothing. Even we've won more trophies than Spurs in the last few years. So he's trying to paint the picture. They're like Chelsea winning trophies when they win nothing, right? But how many Tottenham players would get into that Chelsea 11 last year? And I wrote down 3. So Lo Celso, probably Song. Now I think Kane's a better player than Abraham, but Abraham outscored him last year. So there's an argument Abraham could go in, and then you probably the goalkeeper. But the defence and the midfield, I would have exclusively Chelsea. Lo Celso would probably get in. Although Mount will be pushing in, so I can't see many Chelsea players, Tottenham players getting into that Chelsea 11. So
we're gonna do the last few. We're coming towards the end of the show. Kyle B says first sport back this week is the UFC. Yeah. Graham, UFC behind closed doors. WWE, that's a contact sport. very much a contact sport behind closed doors. They've been doing that. Why can't you have football come back?
Well, for the reasons
just say it.
Yeah, I know. All right. So basically, you're saying then if someone goes and robs the shop tonight, I can go and rob the shop then because someone else has done it. That make it right, doesn't it?
No,
it doesn't make it right, doesn't it, Robbie? It doesn't make it right. At the end of the day,
I'm using that as a case study that WWE's been back behind closed doors. It's awful. I'm not a fan of it anyway, but normally one of the things it relies on is the massive atmosphere, and it looks terrible. They are doing it.
You had someone on your show who watched it, didn't they, and said it's not the same, didn't they? Who was that?
Yeah. They were complaining, saying
was it Lee Chappie? I forget who it was. Someone he's a big fan of it, but it's not the same without.
Yeah, and I think football will be I think people will be saying the same about football, but it does show that you can do it behind closed doors, though, can't you? You can't get more contact. Can't get more contact than that. A guy grabbing a guy, getting him in a chokehold and stuff like that, throwing him down, and you're not going to get more contact than that, are you?
No.
You could argue that nowadays football is non-contact anyway. Can you imagine how many players are going to be diving around? Joshua says, Robbie Graham, reason for pushing for the restart. The current TV deal is up for renewal, and having matches behind closed doors with little or no fans in stadiums will significantly raise the income for the next TV deal. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's about money, isn't it? We've been saying, I think that's been the theme of what we've been saying tonight, is obviously money is a massive factor, and unfortunately it is what it is.
Georgie, 1 foot LCFC says football will be back in 5 weeks. He's predicting.
Yes, June. Is that they're predicting at the moment they want to restart on June the 12th, don't they? So how many? That is that 5 weeks? That's about 5 weeks, more or less, isn't it?
Ola says every business needs to follow the same strategy. Arsenal can win the league in the next 5 years if a solid youth recruitment plan is followed with Arteta in place, unearth talents across the world. It won't be enough if you've got a Newcastle and all these other teams spending big money. And remember, what part of the problem is when teams spend big, they can come and poach your best players. And we've seen that year in, year out, Arsenal. It's not just that you can't buy the best players. It's the fact that if you do develop a player or you do get a gem, even before you finish shining it up, they're in to get the gem. You know what I mean? That's the problem. And that's what's been happening to us year in, year out at Arsenal. We've lost our, look at that at the moment, Aubameyang. Scores goals. Comes to the attention of those clubs with the big money. They want it. If Arsenal was a club that were operating like one of those big clubs, there's no way they'd sell Aubameyang. That wouldn't even be coming into their thoughts. Other clubs wouldn't even come around because they just feel like, get lost. Of course, we're not selling him.
Well, if you're a big club, you've got massive money, you can afford the biggest wages. But what you remember is what you're competing against. If the Newcastle owners, if they came in and they had. If Arsenal offered Aubameyang, say, 250 a week, I don't know what he's on at the moment, they would offer him 300 a week. If we offered him 300 a week, they'd offer him 350, 400. Yeah. So that's what you're up against, aren't you?
Exactly. This guy's saying,
they pay them the biggest wages. They can pay them the best wages. Yeah,
Nick P says, let's get real. How many of the world's best players are going to want to play and live in Newcastle? I know you're looking to go Newcastle anytime soon, are you? Right? He says, I know it's a great night out.
Robbie. They said that about Manchester.
He said, I know it's a great night out, but Mbappe's not gonna be sunning himself on a balcony overlooking the Tyne. Listen, money. I have to send this to the guys from Magpie TV. They'll kill this guy, right? Listen, money has a way of making you travel, mate. And did you think, I remember one of the first signings that Man City pulled off was Robinho. Remember that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think he hadn't even heard of Man City when he went there. He admitted it later on. He hadn't even heard of Man City. But where did he end up? Man City. Where's Kevin De Bruyne and all these guys? Man City. Right? Sterling left from Liverpool, world famous club, to go to Man City. Why do you think he went there? Two things really, because he knows that they're assembling a team of great players and the money. And even, Graham, remember, even when Kevin Keegan was there, right? And they were starting to play that great football and stuff like that. Newcastle was an attractive place to go to, wasn't it? For players. They were starting to get, I'm sure Asprilla had never heard of Newcastle before he went there. Why do you think he went there? It'd be the money, and he saw that the club was showing a lot of ambition. So I disagree.
The worrying thing is that players come to play for Arsenal because obviously we're the biggest and best club in London, but because they say, well, we used to love the way Arsenal played under Arsene Wenger, and we had players like Thierry Henry. Can you imagine players in a few years thinking about going to Arsenal? I want to go to Arsenal because they had Mustafi and Xhaka.
That's what I'm saying. It's running. We've been lucky enough to have that's still, we can still use that. That's starting to run thin. That's starting to run thin now, because as players, those players are starting to be, younger players coming through and not, they're growing up now, not really remembering Arsenal winning anything. They're growing up. So if you've got a player, I mean, when was the last time we won the league? Was
2004.
16 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. So if you've got a player that's say 20, when last time we won the league and we was doing all that great stuff, he was 4. So he's growing up hearing about Chelsea and Mourinho's era. He's growing up hearing about City. He might have seen Man United do a little bit. He's growing up hearing about them clubs. He's not growing up hearing about Arsenal. His dad might tell him, they go, no, that club Arsenal, they used to be brilliant club, man. They went a season unbeaten. And watch this DVD. He goes, is it? Oh, no, Chelsea I heard about. And that's the danger. That's the danger that we don't, and that's why, honestly, the owner's got to get his act together, man, because yes, and I know we started off talking about the whole coronavirus thing and that, but the other threat that we face as a club are these emerging clubs like Newcastle's going to be. And then you can even bring it down to these clubs like Wolves, Leicester. They're doing better than us at the moment. And
the only thing I will say, do you know what? I actually love Newcastle fans. I think they've been through a lot. Now, if they were to emerge,
fans as well, yeah.
Yeah, I would. If they were to emerge and suddenly be up there challenging, I think they've got wonderful fans, Newcastle, and they've been through a lot. So you could argue that
Newcastle with money behind them, Graham, with their fans and their fan base, loyal fan base, and their history, even though they haven't really won anything, and their history as a club, the standing of that club, are going to be a serious threat. Why do you think these guys have bought them? You think they haven't bought it? The Saudi owners haven't bought them because they're coming to holiday on the Tyne. They bought them because they can see that this is a huge club, a sleeping giant, and they can turn that sleeping giant into a mega giant. And
the only thing we can hope, Robbie, is that in time Kroenke sells up, and basically we get an owner in who can match that ambition. That is all we can pray for, isn't it? Because all the time we've got an owner who basically has got no interest in the club, that we're going to be falling further and further behind. Unfortunately, football's been going that way. You said what you've been saying, but it's been going that way for 15 years. I mean, when I grew up, we had clubs like Nottingham Forest, Derby, Ipswich up there challenging for titles, Queen's Park Rangers. Football wasn't determined by money. Teams could develop young teams. Arsenal developed a young team in the 80s under George Graham. Martin Hayes, Niall Quinn, David Rocastle, Mickey Thomas, a young team, and that won the league. But the arrival of Abramovich has changed football, and owners are coming in, and if you're lucky enough to have an owner who can buy, invest in the club, you're going to be serious contenders to win the league. The one thing I'll say about Abramovich is that he has done, whatever you think about Abramovich, he goes and watches Chelsea week in, week out, and he's doing wonderful things in the community at the moment for people in this crisis. So I will take my hat off to Abramovich. He came in. I'm just grateful, Robbie, and this might sound funny. Do you remember the Mo interview when Abramovich, Mo was at his best when he was attacking Chelsea for buying the league, wasn't he? I remember him saying to you, Robbie, they didn't win the league, they purchased the league. I remember him saying it, right? One of your great interviews, right? And he said, Roman Abramovich, his yacht was coming down the Thames. He was thinking, shall I buy that club? Shall I buy that club? He tossed the coin. He chose Chelsea. He could have had Fulham. But the other thing is, just thank your lucky stars he didn't pick Tottenham.
Yeah, and thank you lucky stars, because I'd heard a rumour about a year or so ago that the Saudi owners were looking at Tottenham. Thank you lucky stars they didn't get them. Final one we're going to do here. George Chapman says, Robbie, if Dangote takes over next year, don't worry about the Saudi owners. Watch out, everyone. Well, let's hope Dangote is the richest man in Africa. Maybe it could be him, but at the moment, the Cronkies ain't looking like selling. Or will this coronavirus crisis be finally the thing that makes them think, you know what, it ain't worth it no more?
Well, that's the only good thing that could come out of it, couldn't it? Basically, they might suddenly decide, you know what, this coronavirus.
Somebody was saying to me, Graham, I think is one of the American fans was saying to me that, you know, they're having problems with the LA Rams at the moment and paying players and stuff like that. So I think they wanted to put their players on a pay cut and the players have said no or something. So he's got a lot of clubs, so he's going to have a lot of issues. So who knows? Who knows? It could be, but who knows? Graham, listen, thank you very much for coming on tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. Brilliant as always. You started in the light. It went dark, get light again. You know, it's been brilliant. That's how long we've been on, but it's been fantastic. Thanks very much for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on, as always, Rob. Always a pleasure.
All right, brilliant. And thank you to you guys for watching the show today. Don't forget, we'll be back in the morning with the early edition. Have yourself a great, great evening. And thank you for all of your brilliant contributions tonight.